So, welcome back. My very good friend Larry Alex Taunton is back from Europe after 3 months abroad. Been working on some projects over there, and I want to get caught up with him. Bring him on here, Larry. How are you, buddy? It's good to see you, man.
Hey, I'm great, Chad, and it's funny. These days you can't say that you've been abroad because they'll think that it's a transgender thing. I used to be a woman. I've been abroad, but
Well,
no, I've been overseas for the last 3 months, 7 countries, and I'm glad to be home.
man, with hair like yours, you never know. They might think you're abroad. You never know. How many? I saw your tweet this morning, and by the way, if you're not following Larry Alex Taunton on Twitter, his Twitter threads are legendary. They're informative, they're educational, they're historical, they're packed with solid arguments and facts.
Smart ass.
A little bit of smart ass mixed in, which is why you and I get along so well. You were telling me when you were in Europe, or you were saying on Twitter how many different people that you get confused by, or they say you look like somebody.
Yeah, that's right.
Like
That's
Jeff
so
Bridges
funny.
or Richard
Yes.
Gere or
It's so funny. I had somebody tell me a guy told me in Budapest. He said, hey, he was a hotel like doorman. Maybe about the third time I passed him, he said I looked like Kenny Rogers, and I said, was that before? Was that before or after he had the the facelift?
yeah.
I had someone else tell me that I looked like Jeff Bridges. Somebody else said that I looked like Michael McDonald of the Doobie
I
Brothers.
can see that. I can see that. That's funny.
So it's just the gray hair and the gray beard. Soon it'll be Santa Claus. It'll be Colonel Sanders.
Yeah.
So the older I get.
Well, welcome back home. I'm glad you're back. I don't like you being gone so long. Mostly because you've got a beautiful lake house that I'm ready to come back and visit again.
You gotta come. It's gorgeous right now. We came back just in time for spring.
Dude, envious. Gorgeous place. Anyway, you were working on a new book over there? Is that what you've been doing for the last 3 months?
World Economic Forum. Yep. I was doing a variety of other things, but I went. You'll recall that in January I attended the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos,
Yeah.
and some crazy people there, Chad. It's an interesting place to go. I didn't go into the big plenary sessions. That's the stuff you can get online.
Yeah.
I instead went and sort of milled about among the attendees, and it was fascinating. They're building an army of Greta Thunbergs. It's kind of frightening what they're doing.
So when you go into a place like that, World Economic Forum, and you're talking to these people, do you kind of get the sense that these people see themselves as part of this elitist cabal? They're kind of like on the inside of information the rest of the world doesn't have. What's that attitude like?
Well, yes, 100%, Chad. And let me give you a couple of good examples of that. First of all, Davos is not easy to get to. I kind of hated going to it because the older I get, the less I like to travel. And I have to do it in my work. One of the things I feel that sets me apart and that gives me some measure of value to people like you is that I'm going to these places. So I'm boots on the ground, and I'm reporting to guys like you and your audience about what's going on. But going to Davos, you can't get on a plane and fly there. It's in the Alps. Now you can if you're Bill Gates or one of these 115 billionaires that attended this thing, or 50 heads of state who attended it. And see, what they did was, where I'm going to Zurich and then taking another train and another train in order to get there, they flew their private jets into nearby a private airport near Davos. Then they couldn't be bothered, Chad, to get into their big Mercedes, BMWs, and Audis, the gas guzzling sort.
Yeah.
And not the cheap, entry level ones. We're talking about the ones that are like urban assault vehicles, and they couldn't be bothered to get into those. So what they did is they then took helicopters into Davos. Then they got into these cars and drove a block or two. Then they lectured us all about how we need to reduce our carbon footprint. So right away, that these are people who see themselves as these rules don't apply to them. Then add to this that they tell us we need to reduce the global population, Chad, from roughly 8 billion to less than 2 billion. Did Bill Gates commit suicide? Has he volunteered himself?
He has not given himself up on that altar. No.
Well,
No.
So yes, to your answer, they see themselves, these rules don't apply to them.
What is the attitude in Europe overall towards Americans? How do they view what they perceive or what they see going on here in the United States?
Great question. I think, a lot of Americans think that the rest of the world hates us, and that just isn't the case.
Right.
Much of the world, even, by the way, in countries you think would hate us, like, for instance, in Russia or in China or Vietnam, they tend to be, that is the common people, not the government. They
Sure.
tend to really like Americans, be interested in Americans, and want to engage with you, maybe get a selfie with you. Europeans are very anxious that America is committing cultural suicide. And I published in one of these latest threads that I did a magazine cover from I think it's Le Monde, which is one of the big publications in France that says the American suicide, and it says that we're being destroyed by leftist woke culture. Now, I just want to tell you something. When the French tell you you're too leftist, you need to look in the mirror.
Wow. I'm going to write a song called American Suicide. That's a powerful phrase there. Yeah, I mean, when you look at what we're doing here, and this prior to this segment, we showed how the the Cartoon Network put out a cartoon of explaining how pronouns work. So,
oh, wow.
When we're indoctrinating our children with the Cartoon Network of how to do, and then Canada, we showed the clip where they put out a new LGBT task force against homophobia, where if you say something that's homophobic or transphobic within these basically safe spaces for the community, then you could be prosecuted and charged up to $25,000 in fines.
Yeah.
So if I say, hey, throw me a Bud Light, I love that queer beer, you're going to jail and possibly to court if you say the wrong thing.
You would never do that.
Shit. Larry, I would push the envelope so hard on that. I mean,
Kid Rock. I love what Kid Rock was doing. It was so funny.
But man, I'll tell you, sometimes I sit there. I did it this morning. I look out my hotel room window and I see traffic going by, and I go, does the average American believe the BS that's being peddled out here by the mainstream media? Were you able to keep up much with the mainstream, what's happening in America there? Were you getting your news filtered kind of through European markets?
Well, that's also a very interesting question. There's almost a complete blackout on real news in Europe. Now, I did have access to Twitter, so you saw that I was tweeting over there. But I don't know what the percentage of Europeans are who actually look at Twitter. But Rumble, for instance, is blocked. They can't see that there, and their media is all leftist. There's no Fox News, equivalent. And the point isn't whether listeners like Fox News or trust them or not. The point is there just aren't really any alternative media sources. So you find yourself sitting, something I like about Europe, particularly Southern Europe. Italians, for instance, are very friendly people.
Right.
And if you're sitting they're like Southerners. And if you're sitting at a restaurant next to people, they might engage you in conversation. You're American. Where are you from?
Yeah.
And which I enjoyed quite a lot. But you would often find people spouting nonsense when it came to news issues where you weren't quite sure where they're getting that from. For instance, I just happened to drop casually into a conversation about Biden blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. And I might have said that the moon landing was fake. They looked absolutely shocked. They said, what?
Yeah.
What? And I said, no, he blew it up. This is everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're saying, we've seen nothing about this.
Wow.
And also, Chad, if you mentioned, people dying from vaccines, they've heard none of this unless, as I say, they're managing to get it through some other,
amazing.
Alternative media source.
It's amazing. Hey, Larry, hang with us for another segment. You have some compelling proof that of who's actually running this presidential administration. I want you to break that down. Before we do that, I've got to go to a break. But Larry, we got this new sponsor, dude. I have fallen in love with this product right here, dude. You got guns, I got guns, we got guns. I mean,
yes.
The ones that aren't in the river. This stuff is called Barrel Buddy, and it's their pitch patch, and this is how you clean your guns. So, I hate cleaning guns. It's a hassle in life, and it's a dirty job, but you got to do it. In patches, they can be messy and inefficient, and that whole rope cleaning thing, that leaves stuff behind, and it hides the dirt when it comes to the barrel. Barrel Buddy's a better deal here, guys. Listen, Barrel Buddy compresses to fill the interior of your gun's barrel, making sure that you clean the rifling grooves, and comes in 7 different sizes to match any caliber firearm. And Barrel Buddy is composed of polymers that don't leave behind residual particles, so it's safe too. So it's an amazing concept. It cleans by scrubbing and collecting the particulates, then absorbs any remaining residue, and it buffs the interior surface clean. You can even lubricate your firearm while you're cleaning. So cleaning your gun, man, it's important. It's a major step in being a responsible gun owner, and you want to make sure that it's in its most efficient condition when it's time for action. And Barrel Buddy, it's a totally new concept, better way to take care of your firearm. So I want you to get some today. I guarantee you're going to love them. Go to barrelbuddy.com. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
Forgive me for me.
My guest is Larry Taunton. Please follow him on Twitter. I don't do Twitter. Go do Twitter. At Larry Taunton, Taunton, at Larry Taunton. You will be happy that you did it. You sent me a deal last night. I didn't get a chance to get into it because we were at that movie premiere. I read it this morning.
Yeah, what movie premiere were you
Nefarious. It's Steve Dace's new movie, Nefarious. And so it was my second time.
Okay, he sent me that.
Oh, it's fantastic, dude. It looks like it. Absolutely fantastic. So yesterday was big premiere day around here. Everybody was in town, and so we were hobnobbing last night. But I got into it this morning. And you make a compelling argument because I started to say something the other week when whoever it is that tweets for Joe Biden, he said he put the bust of Cesar Chavez back in the White House in the Oval Office. And I was like, does no one know who Cesar Chavez is? And we have this ongoing speculation of, we know Joe's not running the country.
Yeah, exactly.
Who the hell is running Joe? Your argument is what?
Yeah, well, let's go back to that Chavez, that bust, that little statue of Cesar Chavez. When Obama became president of the United States, his very first act as president of the United States was to remove a similar bust of Winston Churchill, which, by the way, was a gift from the British people to the American people. Mm-hmm. So, it was kind of a big deal. It caused a bit of a scandal when he removed it.
Yeah.
It was an offense to the British people. And he made up all kinds of excuses as to why he did it. But it was a signal as to who Obama is, that he's an anti-imperialist. People want to say he's a socialist or he's a fascist or he's this. He's his father's son. This is Dinesh D'Souza's argument in his book, The Roots of Obama's Rage. Mm-hmm. So he removed the bust of Churchill. Then he declared Cesar Chavez Day in 2014. Cesar Chavez, as you just pointed out, he's a Saul Alinsky follower. He was a Marxist agitator and thug.
Yeah.
But even CNN was aghast when he declared Cesar Chavez Day. They were just like, what in the world is he thinking? Back in 2014. Trump becomes president of the United States. What does he do? He gets rid of Cesar Chavez. He puts Churchill back into the Oval Office. Then Biden, I won't say was elected. We'll say Biden, assumed office. And what did he do? Again, immediately as president of the United States, he removes the Churchill statue and he puts Cesar Chavez back in the Oval Office. That to me is as clear a sign as any that the person who is running the show is Barack Obama. It's not George Soros. It's not Klaus Schwab. It's not Bill Gates. It's not a cabal of World Economic Forum types. It is Barack Obama. And reading that tweet about Cesar Chavez, that's not the sentiment of Joe Biden.
No.
Joe Biden doesn't care about Cesar Chavez. He's not interested in Cesar Chavez. That's Barack Obama all the way.
Yeah. Yeah. We know, and of course, I love to make fun of Joe Biden's tweets because they're not Joe Biden's tweets,
yeah,
and so he can't collect that type of thought. He doesn't. Those things are not going through his head. Not much is going through the man's head. But when I saw him do the Chavez bust, I was like, do people really not know their history of who these people are that they're setting up? But I said that I thought the same thing. I was like, well, this sounds very Obama-esque as an action. And so, but I love the conclusions that you drew through your tweet thread I shared it on mine as well this morning.
Thanks
at
so
Watch
much.
Chad. Yeah, man. Listen. Larry. Anytime you tweet something, you'll send it. And sometimes you'll send one of those long threads. You're like, see what you think, bro. I love it. You've done the research. I love it. I promise you. And I'm always quick to retweet it. And dude, I love the way you put those threads together. You even add pictures in there. It's like reading a little mini book. But yeah, dude, we're in trouble as a country. This Trump indictment thing, if they can go after him, they can go after all of us.
100%.
And we're in trouble, man. You've been in some places around the world. You've seen some things.
Yep.
The economic alliances that are being made against the dollar around the world, we're in trouble. Glenn Beck and I sat down for our overtime this week, and we spent 30 minutes talking about this. This is going to air later this week. How long before we start looking like Venezuela, man?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I think you know that I've been over 60 countries, and earlier this year and last year, I was in South America. I've spent a lot of time in South America following what is happening. Now, this relates to what you're talking about, following what is happening there, because, excuse me, you have these burgeoning democracies there in Brazil and in Colombia that now have elected actual criminal terrorist leftists, supposedly, and most people don't believe they were actually elected, that these are actually individuals. There was some election rigging of the kind that we saw in the United States. So suddenly you have these Marxist, leftist, former terrorists in charge in Brazil and in Colombia. And Petro, who's now the president in Colombia, has declared himself a good friend of Maduro in Venezuela. And you saw Colombia was starting to do this, starting to climb out. Medellin today is one of the safest and most beautiful cities in South America. 30 years ago, it was Pablo Escobar's killing fields.
Right.
But Colombia has seen some real progress. All that is about to be reversed. And I predict that within a decade, it is the next Venezuela, probably the same with Brazil. So how long will it take for this to take place in the United States? Not long if we keep going the direction that we're going. Chad, I'm going to say something that's quite jarring here. They'll accuse me of being an insurrectionist when I say this. But there needs to be a movement of the states no longer cooperating with the federal government, saying we will no longer send you federal tax revenues. I'm not calling for armed insurrection. I am calling for a peaceful resistance. I'm actually not calling even for a secession of states. I am saying that there needs to be a declaration on the part of the states that we have a rogue, I would argue, terrorist government. They are producing terrorists. That's what they're doing in radicalizing youth, like the one who walked into this school and began shooting these Christians. That's the next Twitter thread, is how the left is producing terrorists. So I think we need to stop cooperating with the federal government. Yeah,
they are definitely weaponizing the mentally ill, that's for sure. Larry Alex Taunton, you can find him at LarryAlexTaunton.com. Am I right on that?
Yes,
Larry
perfect.
Yeah, and at Larry Taunton. My brother, I'm coming to see you. I will see you at the lake in Alabama. All right.
Looking forward to having you here. I brought back some Cuban cigars. So
let's go, baby.
We'll enjoy it. I'm waiting for you, buddy. Thanks so much for having me.
God bless you. I'll talk to you soon, Larry. God bless.
All
buddy.
right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Hang tight. We'll be right back.